Hi everyone, we are delighted to have you here for International Women's Day today. This marks the last day in Diversity Week, but hopefully not the last one ever. Congratulations to everybody who's been involved so far in this week, whether you've hosted an event, taken part in an event, or it simply sparked a conversation about diversity and inclusion. Well done to you. Eva McEnany and Antoine Gibbons and team have been leading this initiative, and we're really proud to say that it sparked the conversation globally with other locations looking to replicate Diversity Week as well. So we're hugely proud of that. I'd also like to say a huge hello to everybody who's joining us virtually today. So we're live streaming this event to our Galway office and to colleagues all across Europe. Today, we are delighted to celebrate International Women's Day, and my name is Rosemary Clancy. I lead the Oracle Women's Leadership Community. And a couple of weeks ago, I met Antoine and Eva to talk about what will we do for International Women's Day and how will we interpret the theme of balance for better. And after coming away, having had a coffee and having agreed to put on a diversity week, we were really passionate about the balance of having diversity in the workplace and the value that having a diverse workplace brings to not only the business we work in, but the ability to bring your own self, your real self, and your whole self to work with you, and the creativity that unleashes. And the benefits are both personal and for business when that can happen. So I'm delighted to welcome a really hugely inspiring panel of speakers here today to join us. I'm going to introduce you to our first speakers. So we've got Maria Smith. Maria is Senior Vice President, Assistant Corporate Controller. She's also SVP for our Mergers and Acquisitions team at Oracle, which is, I can't imagine the scope of the role. They've been responsible for over 150 acquisitions in Oracle globally. Most importantly, Maria is an advocate for inclusion, and that was one of the reasons why we are really delighted to have her here today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Maria Smith to join us. So thank you very much, Geraldine. Just make sure, can you all hear me? Yeah. Good. Thanks a million, Geraldine. And I just want to say well done to Eva and everybody here on the panel for spending the time with us and for all the work that you've put in to this week of diversity. I have to tell you, all I'm hearing is such positive feedback and how much it's valued by each and every one of all of our teams. So thank you so much for that. It's interesting when you were introducing me by my job role. I usually go with the fact that I'm the mother of 3 kids first, because that role actually is much tougher. You know that famous question when people say, what would you say to your 16-year-old self? And I think about if I was to call out that job description to myself when I was 16, I would have probably said, I have no clue what that means. I just wouldn't have had a clue. And it's actually quite interesting because there's so much at the moment in media around, the younger generation, the jobs that they will do and the jobs that many of you will do don't exist today. So it just reminded me actually that was also the case for me when I started out in my other lifetime. So I have to say it's an easy audience today because I can only imagine that everybody who is here are people who are genuinely interested in inclusion. And for that, I do want to say to everybody looking back here at me, thank you. Because I know these are the ambassadors in Oracle in Ireland. So thank you for that. So I don't have too much time, so I'm going to just talk about a few positive things first of all, because today is a day of celebration. And I just want to talk a little bit about the political climate that we see and the awareness that we see at the moment. We were just talking here while we were waiting about thank you, the actual momentum and at this moment in time, it feels different. Do you know what I mean? It actually
feels different to any other year for me. And this makes me really, really optimistic. I was at Accenture's, their International Women's Day event this morning, and this was said by many, many people. Frances Fitzgerald, a previous Taoiseach, and many, many senior leaders in this country. And I find that very heartwarming. So in Oracle, maybe I'll just call out a couple of things. One is, does anyone ever reflect on the fact that we have two CEOs in this company? One is male, one is female. I actually think about this a lot, a bit of a nerd, and I love this model. I actually think the models of the future are not going to be the same as the models of today. And maybe this is something that will happen in the future, because there's two things here. One is it means you get a lot more people to the table. But the second thing is there's another discussion that's separate to this, which is people in very senior positions. You hear of a lot of people and their health and how are they looking after themselves, because the demands on those jobs are so big. So I actually really admire the fact that this is something, I think it's pioneering in a company of Oracle's size. Can you hear me? No? The second thing I was going to say was, I don't know how many of you saw it, but Safra Catz was on the cover of Forbes magazine this week. And she is the first tech female billionaire in Silicon Valley. I mean, talk about a role model for all of us. That is just amazing. But what I would like to say is that's a measure of finance for Safra. I'm going to tell you, she has more integrity, and she is such an intelligent woman to work with. She is absolutely inspiring. And this is the person who is the co-CEO of the company we're in. We are very, very lucky. And there's another lady who in our company is just so supportive, and that is Dorian Daly. She's the general counsel of Oracle. And Dorian is just so open-minded about everything. I have to tell you a funny story. A lot of the people on my team are on boards of directors of all of the subsidiaries of Oracle. And one of the ladies on her team came back to work, and she was still feeding her new baby. And we had to go to a board meeting in Europe. So she's there in America. She doesn't know what to do. She's going, I'm feeding the baby. I can't leave the baby. I've got to go and get this board meeting done. What am I going to do? And with Dorian, she agrees, bring the baby. So we're at this board meeting in Europe. And I swear, I was holding the baby while she was getting all the paperwork ready. And then we were trying to get the baby to sleep and putting the baby on the couch. And then we went through about 10 board meetings. I tell you, we were efficient. I tell you, we got through that work, no messing, laser sharp. Just in time before the baby woke up. It was brilliant. So then we came back, I remember, to Dublin, and we went out for dinner with Dorian. And again, we were all holding the baby, passing the baby around, you know, and it was normal. And this is a culture we have here in Oracle, this is why I'm here. I joined Oracle in 1999, intending to stay for 2 years. 2 years. I'm obviously not good at maths, because that's 20 years in May. And these are some of the stories as to why I'm still here. I call that my baby on board story. You know, whenever you see that on the back of a car, baby on board, I keep thinking of that particular meeting. Another interesting observation I would have is customers. Our customers expect us to show up in a diverse way. I was at Oracle Open World recently in London, and we got feedback which actually was very interesting. It was that the attendees were not diverse enough. The attendees, like, people register, you know, it's not necessarily a pointed thing, but the attendees were not diverse enough. Now, I noticed that when I was walking around, But that goes to show you where the environment is at the moment around this gender, specifically diversity. It's amazing. So our customers want us to show up, and they want all representation at the table. And this morning, just 2 points, and I'll move on. There was so much data, but basically, for example, a company like Accenture were saying, if they do not get to equal, they're a company of over 400,000, they will not succeed because they have to have innovation. And you have to have inclusion to have innovation. The other thing that is definitely coming out is companies who are inclusive in competition are winning against companies who are not inclusive. I was at a talk by a lady who invests trillions in pension funds. And do you know what one of the tick the box questions is when they're going to invest? Are there women on the board? And if there's not women on the board, they take it as a sign that it is not a progressive company, so it's not likely to be innovative and succeed in the future. So when I say this moment is the best and it feels different, from every angle it does. So I think that's something we all should celebrate. But I'd like to move on because we're not done. We all know we're not done. There's a lot to do. And I just thought I'd mention a few things, even if I'm a little bit provocative, just to say them. One of the things I would say is if in your role you're part of a team or forming a team, you know, every one of you can highlight if there's not a diverse team, right? Everyone can make sure that the teams that are working on innovative ideas are diverse. That's number one. Number two, if you're a manager, do you know your gender metrics for your team at every level? Because if you really don't know them, it's data, it's black and white. You can see where you have your gaps. You can see where you have to build your pipeline. And following on from that, and this is firmly my position and my team know this is a management responsibility. This isn't something that women have to go off over there and talk to each other about and then come back into the workplace. This is a management responsibility. This is my responsibility for my team and in any team that I influence. The other thing I would like to say is if there's vacancies, if there's promotions and you're hiring, sometimes you don't realize biases you have. I have biases. We all have biases, no doubt about it. It's a good tip, and I've heard this from many people, to get a second pair of eyes to look over what you're doing, to look over how you've narrowed down your CVs, to look over who you're bringing to the table for interviews. It's a really good idea. Get a second pair of eyes over what you're doing to make sure you don't have a blind spot, okay? These are conscious things, but the thing that actually worries me the most is you probably all heard of unconscious bias. You know, it's that blind spot. You just don't see it. That's the one that really worries me. You know the famous expression, seeing is believing? And now, you cannot be what you cannot see, okay? So this morning, they had this wonderful, wonderful event where in the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, there was history, paintings of males all over the building. And as one child said, and it was actually my friend's child, where are all the women? Innocently, where's all the women? So what they did was they went back and they got portraits done of 8 women who are pioneering women, not only in Ireland, but globally. And they've put the 8 paintings up on the boardroom wall to give visibility, because they spoke about the fact that healthcare is so important. If they don't have inclusion at the consultant level and the research level in health, we're all not going to have the best innovation and solutions for things like cancer research. So think about this. When I talk about why this is important, it's not for women. This is for all of us. If that's how you get the best innovation, we want it for men and we want it for women. I want it for my sons and I want it for my daughters. This is about everybody. Is my microphone gone? I'm still there, okay. Let me see, how am I doing on time? Yep. One of the things I just mentioned as well is, maybe you're all very aware of this, but I grew up in a time, and actually my kids grew up in a time, when you went to a toy shop and there was a pink aisle and a blue aisle. Now I actually don't even know if there's still pink aisles and blue aisles. But if you think that by the age of 7, you form most of your biases, by the age of 7. But if you've been marched down the pink aisle to buy the nurse's outfit, and as a son, if you've been marked down there to buy the doctor's outfit, or your daughter is there thinking, well, I'd really like that chemistry set, but I'm not going over there because that's my brother's aisle. That is ingrained. That is ingrained in all of us. And I think it's still happening. There's a Twitter, there's one particular thing I follow, it's called Let Toys Be Toys. It's actually alarming to think in this day and age, you know, that this still exists. It's just ridiculous to me. I can't understand it. But the point is, those biases, you know, they're in every organization, they're in with all of us, and we have to unlearn the biases. And that's where we can all help each other out by pointing them. That's where the second pair of eyes comes in when you're interviewing, when you're promoting, when you're hiring. It helps us all because we all have them. And one thing, do many of you ever hear of the implicit test on Harvard? Don't see many, no? Go onto Harvard education site, and there is a test called the implicit test. It's just for yourself, and you can go into any, there's many different ones. One is gender bias, right? There's many different types. And you just go through a very fast-paced set of questions, and you get a result. And I know some people who've done that and shared the result, and they were shocked. And it's just a way of having, you know, awareness for yourself. You may think you are not holding biases, but maybe in fact you are. So, and it's another step you can do to learn how you're thinking. So I know I'm nearly up on time, so I'm just going to quickly say something. I just wanted to go through a few things about maybe my own career and things I've learned that are important to everybody, and I'll try and be fast here. Some people talk about, you know, maybe you can be lucky in work, you can be lucky and you can get opportunities. I only believe that hard work creates the luck. And, you know, that's definitely it. Your existing job, to me, was always the interview for the next job. It wasn't the interview. It's what you're doing today is your interview for your next job. Crap happens. I didn't say the other word. Crap happens. And you know what you do? You suck it up and you move on. You move on. You have to develop a thick skin. In my experience, I've been very lucky. I've had great male advocates. I remember my father teaching me to drive, and I was a nervous Nelly. I was like, can I turn right? Can I turn right? Can I turn left? Can I turn left? And he said to me, Maria, is there a wall there? And I said, no, there's no wall. Well, then what's the worst that's going to happen? So he taught me to be fearless, just go for it. I would also say I've been very lucky with you know, some of the coaches and some of the managers I've experienced in Oracle. I had one particular mentor where he turned things I saw as my negatives into what he said were actually positives. So to have advocates like that is very, very important. The other thing I would say is always broaden your experience. It's not always about going up a ladder. Broadening your experience is very important. And In change is another area where, and I know Safra talks about this, where things are changing, there's always opportunity. Always opportunity. So go and don't be frightened to change, embrace it and see what happens in change. So the last thing I would say is, because I can see some of them looking back at me here, one of the key things to success in terms of getting on to, in promotion is your team. If you have a good team, and boy do I have a good team, they propel you. They propel you. If your team is not the best, they're going to drag you back down. And you have to have the best. And so remember that you actually work so that you make yourself retired out of your current job. You're ready for the next one. Give them the responsibility, empower them, and move on. So your team is critical. And I'm going to finish up because I think I must be up on 10 minutes. There was a lady, some of you may know her, called Sinead Burke, and she's an advocate for inclusion in design and also in fashion. And she was talking to schoolgirls yesterday, and when she finished talking to them, what she said to them was, "You are all powerful." And I think this comes back to the point of the responsibility at the end of the day for inclusion is with everyone. It's with yourself, and don't rely on anyone else. Own it. So she finished up yesterday, and I'll finish up today saying the same thing. What are you going to do with your power? So thank you very much, Geraldine.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think it creates such a nice segue into introducing Sarah Colgan. So many of you have probably seen the 20 by 20 initiative. If she can't see it, she can't be it. And I think, referencing Safra and for, of course, yourself, if you can't see it at the top, then you can't be it. And I think you're a huge inspiration for all of us. So thank you so much for joining us here today. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Colgan. Sarah founded 20 by 20. I'm not going to give away the story because she'll tell it so much more powerfully than I will. So without further ado, Sarah, thank you.
One Saturday morning in January last year, I was frantically rushing out the door with my 3 kids, gathering up jerseys and trying to find gum shields and missing football boots. We'd recently joined at our local GAA club, and my daughter was moaning about not wanting to go. And as I was scrambling for car keys and totally on autopilot, I just thought, fine, it's not worth the battle, but there's no way I'm letting her brother give up. And I caught myself in that moment, and there's not a cell in my body that actually agrees with that. And I couldn't believe how easy it was for me to think that maybe she might not have sport, but how determined I was for my son. And I decided to embark on a totally different approach as a parent. It has had a huge effect, and I can't tell you the difference that it's made in her. And she might be the smallest in her class, but she's an absolute powerhouse. And it was this seed that would lead my Along Came a Spider co-founder, Heather Thornton, and I to create 20 by 20. Our mission when we founded Along Came a Spider was to develop ideas that had purpose and that could create a change in the status quo. And our mission as parents of both sexes was to tackle what I think for our society is a deeply ingrained subliminal bias around boys and girls, or men and women, when it comes to sport. The starting point was just to make society aware that it was there, to hold up a mirror to what is normal, and to question it, or at the very least, to recognise it. Here is the first film that we made.
I normally do Cristiano Ronaldo celebration. It's where he runs to the corner, turns around, and then goes,
I love sweating. I don't know why, it just feels good. It makes me feel like I'm on top of the world.
Get to be rough sometimes. I like that.
To me, football's just football.
Yeah, they always go like, oh, you're only girls, you aren't fast, you aren't tough and all. And like, we're actually quite tough. I'm quite a tough person.
I think one day we'll probably get there. Maybe in 10 years, if we're lucky, we might. Yeah.
I'm going off to play a football match now.
So 20 by 20 is about championing girls in sport. The problem on the outside was that women's sport was trapped in this vicious cycle of low attendances, a lack of media coverage, and poor participation. 20 by 20 got its name because it has three measurable aims: to increase attendance at women's events, to increase media coverage of women in sport, and to increase participation at all levels by 2020. But 20 by 20's true purpose is actually something else. It's about changing hearts and minds, and it's about creating a real and tangible cultural shift where women's sport can become part of what we follow as a nation, part of our cultural DNA in the way that men's sport always has been. There's an ever-growing list of Irish female athletes winning on the world stage, but there isn't the noise. Culturally, it's not something we make noise about. We follow male athletes. We are their fans. We unite as a nation to watch men's competitions. We want our son to play, even if to set him up socially, apart from the obvious benefits. And we're used to imagery of men with muscles, sweat, mud, which is very different, as we know, to the imagery we're used to seeing of women. And I'm using sport today, but I believe that the same principles which we held so strong in shaping 20 by 20 apply to gender at a wider global level. Whether it's women in business, women in science, women in tech, women in politics, or women in sport, we can set targets, and that's really valid, and we can launch programs, and we can provide support structures. But our founding belief with 20 by 20 is ultimately that if something is not embraced from a cultural perspective, then it's just not sustainable. So the 20 by 20 slogan, if she can't see it, she can't be it, it's not just about seeing an elite athlete and becoming one. It's about seeing the girls on your road go off to play on a Saturday morning. It's about seeing your mother or your friend's mother coaching. It's about seeing your family want to sit down to watch a women's game. It's about seeing female athletes on front covers and seeing female teams holding up trophies. It's about seeing a county unite for the women's side at All-Ireland finals as well as for the men's. And it's about seeing women in sport become the norm. And then it will undoubtedly become a bona fide part of our culture. This is what happened 100 years ago with the Dick Kerr ladies football team. The team was formed by women who were working at Dick Kerr & Co, who'd been drafted into the company to help produce ammunition during World War I. And although women had obviously traditionally been totally discouraged from playing football, it was believed then that organised sporting activity would kind of be good for morale in the wartime factories and also would help to boost production levels. And so for the first time, women were encouraged. One time, when it was during a period of low production at the factory, the women would join the young boys, the male apprentices, in the yard to play football during their tea breaks. After beating the men in an informal game, the women decided to form a team, and their popularity grew. And on Stevens's Day in 1920, the women managed to draw a crowd of 53,000 at Goodison Park in Liverpool. Within a year of that happening, the Dick Kerr ladies, as well as all the other women's teams in England, lost their official recognition by the FA. And they were not allowed to use any FA grounds to play. Ostensibly, it was due to concerns that women's bodies were not physically able for sport and that it was damaging. However, it's widely thought that the popularity of the team threatened the men's game. The crowds for the ladies were often bigger than the crowds for the men's, and it provided a huge setback for women's sport, obviously, in England. When the ban was finally lifted 50 years later in 1971, it still wasn't until 1993 that the women's game was taken back into the FA in terms of administration and funding. In Ireland too, there were letters into RTE as recently as the late 70s highlighting grave concerns, not only about how unladylike it was, but also the permanent damage that these women, by playing sport, were doing to their bodies. History has impeded women in sport, and men's sport got a big head start. But the problem is that sport is a tradition. It's a habit, and it's passed down through generations. For my generation and above, who have grown up without women in sport being a real part of our cultural DNA, we need to positively discriminate now and to put in a conscious cultural investment so that for younger generations it becomes something real. We need to look at how we do it from the top, like governing bodies of sport and the media, to reel in a new audience, to give them context, and to make them care. And that won't happen overnight. There's a process to a female athlete or female team becoming a household name. We need more female presenters, more female commentators, and more female experts. We need to look at our language. We've got the Dublin football team and the Dublin ladies football team. We've got, the men have the Six Nations, women have the Women's Six Nations, the World Cup and the Women's World Cup, the captain and the lady captain. No, she's still a captain, and a cricketer, male or female, is still a cricketer. And we also need to look at how we do it at grassroots. So whether that's young girls wanting to start a sport, teenage girls not quitting, or women who don't play sport feeling emboldened to try it, or old players deciding to become a coach, a referee, or get involved at board level. We need to adopt approaches that suit how we're hardwired, rather than adopting the same approach that works for boys or men. There's a great quote which came out quite recently from Australia. Girls need to feel like they belong to play well. Boys need to play well to feel like they belong. So it's just different approaches. As my daughter became a stronger kicker and a better passer and a faster runner, she still hated tackling for the ball. She'd come over to me at the side of the pitch to hide her tears every time she was made to do a tackle. She hid and she faced me to gather herself for a minute, and then she ran out again. And other than for the born stars, team sport is often more intimidating for girls at the start, and they just sometimes need a different approach or encouragement to find a sport they love, whether it's fencing or frisbee, cricket or canoeing. As parents, teachers and coaches, we need the conscious investment now in terms of support until the cultural bias fades. This morning we released the film actually that you just saw there. I'm going to play them in the wrong order, which was asking everybody to show their stripes and to pledge one small action for girls and women in sport. It has been trending on Twitter all morning, and we've had thousands of pledges so far. And there are people, our top athletes, as well as clubs, schools all across the country, standing up to show their stripes for girls and women in sport. So this video was our initial snapshot at what the landscape was and why we decided to do the Show Your Stripes push.
I love running, I'm very good at it. All my family calls me Speedy.
I'm black belt.
I got whacked in the knee today, or a hurl.
When you get in the boat, you just get this rush.
Ronaldo, Paul Pogba,
Usain Bolt,
Jack McCaffrey.
Rory McIlroy.
Women's sports stars.
I don't really know any of the girls, so.
Whenever people are recording things, they want to record girls for some reason.
Oh, you have to come to this match, it's going to be great. And then the women's are just kind of like, oh, come if you can.
The only thing that they passed was if the teacher makes a rule saying you have to pass to 5 girls before you can score. In my head, I'd be like, you should have passed to me. Then, like real life, I just don't say anything.
So to close, I'll just say the 20 by 20 is not women for women. It is all of society for all of society. It's not just to get more girls playing or more publicity for female athletes. It's to get more sport for a nation of sport lovers. The notion that if sport is good, which is certainly a belief we hold in Ireland, then more sport is better. It's to get more of our population playing, and in so doing, having a society that's more physically and mentally healthier. And it's to show younger generations, boys and girls, that women are not inherently less worthy of our attention. By doing this, it is society and not just women who will come out on top. Thank you.
Hello. I'm on. Good. Thank you so much, Sarah. As you can see, I have stolen Rosie's mic. I felt she had enough attention for the day, so I went over, robbed her mic. The videos on your speech, absolutely amazing. I think for about the 10th time, or maybe more, I'm underselling how many times I've cried this week. It's been a very emotional week. We're about to host a panel discussion with some of our wonderful employees that have been involved in Diversity Week and sharing stories throughout the week. And as they get ready and get mic'd up, we're going to show you a video in case that we made to promote this week. So in case you haven't seen it, enjoy. We'll be back in a few minutes with the panel.
Well, diversity means to be able to kind of bring different perspectives all together for a greater output.
We've all heard of the phrase putting your work hat on.
Diversity is like really different for everyone, but for me it's more about embracing everyone's uniqueness.
We kind of have a tendency to think there's our real self and then there's your work personality.
Diversity means a lot of things, but I think the way I can describe it the best way would be that it's like a bag of Skittles. You've got the red Skittle, the blue Skittle, a purple Skittle. The one thing about it is that they all deserve to be in that bag. They all belong there, even though they're all different.
We accept everyone in society, like, regardless of, say, your ability, inability, colour, race, gender, everyone's included.
I thought about this for a long time, and I believe that over the years, I've learned that if you bring who you are to work, you don't really have to balance that much.
What always was a big thing is this, like, coming out to other people. So myself, I'm gay, which is, a lot of people are gay, but it's always something when you have to come out to other people, which is, it's difficult sometimes.
So, for instance, I was born with spina bifida and I use crutches, and the fact that I know that I can come into work every day in Arkle and can get around easily.
Personally, in my own life, I've experienced, depression, and it's something that when it was happening to me, there was still very much a stigma attached.
As the head of Open in Ireland, which is Oracle's LGBTQ+ group, for me, it's really important that for LGBTQ people, that they have the opportunity to speak freely.
I think it would be difficult to pretend to be someone else at work because you're there most of the time of your day, and that would be double work and even harder work.
If I couldn't be my authentic self, I think that I would feel lost. I feel a bit muted.
I was living in the USA. I was separated from my family. I didn't realise it was going on. And even now, it's terrifying kind of talking about it. What's great about things like Diversity Week is it brings things like this to the fore.
I think everybody here treats it the exact same, whether you're a woman or a man or you're an intern. I wouldn't expect any less.
Nobody wants to be robots. let's be unique, let's be diverse, let's be different, and that's when we'll have success.
I think that everyone needs to know what makes them themselves.
Everybody has something, or everybody's going through something, so just be kind.
Round of applause for the panel. Are these seats okay? We might move. Yeah. Okay, welcome guys. And hello Potsdam and Berlin and Instagram live. Please remember not to swear. That's kind of a reminder to myself. Guys, just to introduce myself, my name is Antoine and my preferred pronouns are she and her.
Hi, I'm Eva McNeely and my preferred pronoun is she, her.
Hi, I'm Bernelle McKenna and my preferred pronoun is she, her.
Hi everybody, I'm Vanessa O'Mahony. My preferred pronoun is she, her.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Mee. My preferred pronouns are he, him.
Hello, I'm Darrell White. My preferred pronouns are he, him.
Lovely. We're all really cozy in line, like you may have noticed that we introduced ourselves there using our preferred pronouns. If you didn't, you might be asleep, and please wake up now because it will be a very interesting discussion. So has anyone here done that before in a meeting? Introduced themselves using their preferred pronouns or got their team to do that? Can I have a show of hands? Serkan, we did. So just one out of everyone. Okay, so it was Andrew. He was the leader this week of our LGBTQ plus day. We kicked off that day on Monday with a manager training, which was really, really informative. And Andrew, you suggested today that we introduce the panel using our preferred pronouns. Can you explain why that's important?
Sure. So it is a very common thing in LGBTQ events that you introduce yourself with your pronouns. The main reason being, even if there's not a person who uses different pronouns, it creates an atmosphere where people become comfortable talking about their pronouns. So that way, when you meet somebody who wants to be described as they, them, for example, there are other ones, that you're comfortable with that idea and that there's no stigmatism around it. So.
Brilliant. So it's just a little something to think about. I hadn't thought about it before this week, and it's one of the many things that I am learning, as I think we're all learning a lot this week. So as I mentioned there, everyone here was really involved this week and shared our stories, and we had different themes every day. We didn't get to hear Vanessa's story yet, so I'm going to lead by asking Vanessa to share a little bit about your story as a woman in leadership. So how has your journey been, I guess, rising through the ranks in what we can safely say is still a male-dominated industry that we work in?
Thanks, Antoine. So first of all, thank you for including me. I feel like it's going to be somewhat of an anticlimax given the week we've just had and the absolutely inspiring stories that have been shared throughout the week. I think pushing us all a little bit outside of our comfort zone, not just with the she, her, and the pronoun introductions, but in general, forcing us all to take a step forward and embrace diversity in total and challenge some of the things that are either conscious or unconscious within us. So I'm delighted to be here, and I hope my story doesn't bore you. But it's my story, and you know, for most of my adult life, I'm 43 years of age, and for most of it, I was oblivious to being a woman and whether that was of relevance to anything or everything I did. So I was born in Cork, which I'm very proud of, and you know, I may talk too much, that's part of coming from Cork. I come from my family of origin. I'm the eldest of 6 children, 4 girls and 2 boys. And I suppose for me, what I now know but didn't know at the time was that I was born into the privilege of having equal expectation of my parents and by my immediate family. So as I said, there were 4 girls, 2 boys. Sometimes I think that there was probably more expectation put on the girls. If I look at where we all sit now, the real privilege is that we had a choice. We had a choice about whether we wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, whether we wanted to do 3rd level education. 3 of us are now in sales as sales directors in tech. 1 is a teacher, 1 is a stay-at-home one, and my mum and my brother is in the Navy for the last 20 years. And really, I suppose, what's important for me to acknowledge in reflecting on that is that that is not the privilege that many people have. And I'm not just talking about far-flung places where education is withheld, but every day in Ireland where families and children and girls are growing up in environments where biases and social norms do not offer them the same opportunities that I was given. So, and I'm a little bit reluctant to reflect on a time where I kind of thought, well, if you work hard, I don't know what girls are giving out about, Of course they have the same opportunity if you go to college and then you work hard, and look for the opportunities that are presented to you, you're not held back. And okay, I'm probably being a bit tough on myself there. I wouldn't have, been quite as judgy, but certainly there was a bias within me that, opportunity was there, and, I had that opportunity. And that was my experience. So I'm going to fast forward, right, because a lot of it is fairly standard stuff, and there's a lot of really good stuff to get to yet today. But I remember joining Oracle for the 2nd time, which was 7 years ago now. And the first week I joined, I was invited to an OWL event, and Sinead Bryan, who was a previous finance director for the UK Tech Organisation, was the OWL leader at the time. And I remember her talking about some of the initiatives that were being run within Oracle. There was an introduction to some of the stories of female colleagues who had really struggled, and there was a lot of talk about mentoring and coaching and programs to support people within Oracle. And I went home that day, and I really felt that I was in an organisation that was interested and invested in my success, and not just my success, but my success in being a woman. About a year later, I took on the OWL community leader role from Sinead, and I think that's probably where this sort of reflection about my own privilege and some of the challenges that women today still feel every day in, climbing that ladder, coming back from maternity leave, etc. And I suppose really, as well as my story, what I want, and it's probably linked to what Maria was talking about earlier, is we all have a responsibility. Most of the decisions today, in fact, pretty much all of them, I think about 80% if we look at boardrooms in the US, are exclusively made by white males. And it is not about the women talking in the corner, and understanding how we can coach each other or mentor each other or sponsor each other. It's about getting everybody on board. It's good for business. And I don't think we've really reached a point yet where everybody accepts that and actually really feels that that's the starting point. And I think that's where some of the complexity around the conversation comes in, because there's so much work to do for everybody in every organisation at every level to really feel that and drive the agenda.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Vanessa.
Sorry, I nearly forgot my 4 daughters.
Oops.
So, yes, I have 4 daughters. Just this morning, I wished them all Happy International Women's Day, and my second daughter, Nora, said to me, "Why is there no International Men's Day?" And I actually struggled to explain to her, and I thought, this is beautiful, because she now is also growing up. Of course, there's societal bias, and we heard about girls in sports, etc. But from her perspective, she has that privilege, and probably more of it. I don't know if there are the pink aisles, but I wouldn't take them down there if there were. Last week she had her birthday party, and she said, "Isn't there a girl thread for sending out the invitations?" Which there is, right? So totally natural within. She's in a mixed school. Is for there to be the girls' moms and the boys' moms, and the girls get invited to the girls' parties. And I nearly went to send the invitation, and then I said, "Well, who would you invite from the boys?" And she said, "Oh, well, I want to invite so and so and so and so and so and so." So I set up a new thread, and I think awareness is where we recognise that there are blind spots, and they are all feeding into the differences between girls and boys, and we all have a role to play in challenging those.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thankfully you didn't get your daughters there. So And by the way, we will be opening up to questions shortly as well. So keep in mind any questions that you might have as we continue the discussion. So just moving from one inspiring woman in leadership to another, Bernal, you led our Cultural Diversity Day this week, which was another great day where we heard wonderful stories as well from Caroline and Julia. And it came up about a cultural diversity in leadership roles. Do you want to share something around the importance of having a better balance in that sense as well?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to say happy International Women's Day to all the women in the audience, those that are on live stream as well. Obviously, thank you for the men that are here to support the initiatives and to recognize the diversity that we have here in Oracle from a leadership perspective, and also from the participation of females in our business. So for me, cultural diversity is something I take very personally, because coming from an ethnic background and being in leadership, you feel unique. It's not a place that you necessarily want to be, but it's the reality. So I shared a couple of stories this week about, what my background has been, what my experience in the professional environments have been, in terms of good experiences and experiences that might not necessarily have been as welcoming as the one that I have here in Oracle. I have amazing peers who don't make me feel unique, and that I am tokenized, that I'm, an ethnic number, the only black female in leadership. So for me, what I'd like to say about cultural diversity, I think there is an onus on us as leaders to, number one, create an environment where people at all levels do feel that there is a place to bring their unique character, their individualism, their creativity. I think cultural dimensions do that. It's good for business. Diversity means innovation. If you look at the markets that we cover in our business, if you look at the people that work around us, we come from diverse backgrounds, and particularly here in Europe, we are well positioned in terms of free movement of people across borders to be able to have an environment like this where people like myself and others feel welcome and feel that they are welcome in an environment that appreciates us for who we are and where we've come from. Secondly, there are some interesting statistics that I've only come across over the last week, obviously being more sensitive to cultural diversity within the workplace. And it's interesting to know that cultural teams are far more likely to outperform homogeneous teams. What that means, when people think the same and they bring the same backgrounds, you get pretty similar outputs. When you mix that up a bit, things get really interesting, and that's where the creativity comes in. In terms of us as leaders, again, I do think having that awareness of who are the people that we lead, and having that representation and creating those environments is really important. Also, there's a really interesting one that I actually wrote it down because I don't think I was going to be able to remember. According to a study by McKinsey, companies with top executives that have a diverse background are 35% likelier to financially outperform the industry medians. For me, this is significant. And it really says to me that in terms of embracing cultural diversity at a leadership level, there's success in store for us as a business in embracing those cultural dimensions. So it's not just good for business, and it's not about just having that feel good, having that, feeling of that we're doing a good thing. It's important that people feel unique, they feel welcome, and in terms of the markets and cultures that we serve in terms of our customers, it's really important that we demonstrate, to Maria's point earlier, that as providers, that we do represent ourselves in that way. So that's my answer.
I do want to stick with you, Bernal, for just one, because I found out this week at your Storyscape that you also were a competitive athlete. So very inspiring. So anyways, just curious as to when you were listening to Sarah and looking at the videos, I actually saw you getting a little bit emotional. So did that resonate, and any thoughts just on that?
Absolutely. So I'll put it like this. Coming from the islands and also being of ethnic, in terms of how seriously you're taken in sport, it is a real thing, it is a real challenge. I won't go into the specific personal stories, but what I will say is that in growing up, it's really hammered into you that if you want to be taken seriously at a competitive level as a female and as a black female, that you really almost need to overcompensate. And I suppose that's, for me, what has driven a sense of high achievement on a personal level. But I feel in terms of what's been presented by 2020, it really speaks to me from the point of view that we need to give young females the equal opportunities to be successful in sport, and recognize that females in sport do bring just as great dimensions as male sports. We need female role models, and it really starts from as parents, are we taking the responsibilities of actually taking that serious responsibility to give that exposure, to find role models that are our daughters can emulate. I probably didn't have any. I won't say how old I am, but in growing up I didn't have many. So what I decided to do is that I'm gonna carve a little bit of that on my own. I was a high performing athlete, very much into sprinting events and hurdles and long jumps. And for me, that's really how I paved my way in sport. And I would love to see little girls from every background, having the successes that I've seen in sport and I've seen in my profession.
Thank you so much. I knew I could spring that question on you. I knew you'd have a great answer for that. So over now to who I would call the woman of the moment. Eva, this week really stemmed from an idea that you had, a passion that you had. Can you tell us why it's so important to you?
Yeah, well, I suppose coming to Oracle and spending the last number of months here, I've really the diversity of our workforce and how that's really it's really one of our key strengths here. It seems to me that it's really one of the aspects that makes us a real success. And I was kind of struck by that, and I kind of felt like it really should be celebrated a little bit more. I felt like there should be kind of an outlet for it to be celebrated. So when Rosie was organising the International Women's Day, we thought it was kind of a perfect opportunity to make kind of a week-long celebration out of it. And then we kind of were picking our different aspects, our cultural diversity and our physical disabilities and LGBTQ and all the different kind of aspects that we wanted to celebrate. So I think it's just important to shout about it and to celebrate kind of what makes us unique. And I was kind of delighted to be able to do that this week, and the response has just been amazing. I think one of the highlights has been probably our storyscapes, because it's kind of only through learning other people's stories we kind of really realise kind of our diversity, and we celebrate that, and then we can kind of bring our best selves to work as well, which I think is really important. So that's kind of why it was kind of so passionate. I was so passionate about it, and obviously being born with spina bifida as well, using crutches every day, I have my own kind of diversity and my own kind of challenges every day. So I kind of thought it was good to share that as well with other people, and maybe that will kind of inspire them to share their story.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who don't know as well as sharing a story this week, Eva and Sandra also facilitated a disability awareness workshop, which I did attend myself, and it was really eye-opening, the challenges that people face every day. And I would definitely hope that we will host more things like that, and that we'll get more awareness in the future as well. So that was amazing. Thank you so much, Eva. So Daryl, there at the end, how are you doing? Good. So Daryl was the leader on Tuesday this week. On Tuesday we focused on mental health. So I think sometimes when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it is something that we can overlook. And Daryl was brave enough to share his story in the video. Can you tell us why you felt that was important, sharing your story this week?
Yeah, the subject itself I think is still very much taboo. There's great strides for us to talk about mental health, and something just personally is that I've encountered is that it's not particularly welcomed in the workplace. So when I saw something like Diversity Week being set up and that there was a particular focus, and thanks to Eva for actually giving the platform first, because that gave me the courage, I think, that there's a team of people willing to share these stories that I could talk about my own. So it was very much a speech about inclusion, that it should be included, that it's okay to talk about it, that we should talk about it, and that, you know, you're not alone. There's help, professional anonymous help. We actually offer it here in our EAP program, or Employee Assistance Program. If you've not had a look at it, have a look at HR. It's for you and your family, and it's free and completely anonymous. I've used it in my personal life, so have my family members, and it's really helped me as a person to grow, as a husband, as a father, and just the day that's in it as well. It really makes me take stock of the very, very strong women in my life, my sister, my mum, and my amazing wife. So just to kind of round it back to Women's Day, I think it's important to, all the topics this week were important. My particular, mental health story is that the message was, it's all right to talk about it. It does happen, and don't hide in the shadows. Find your tribe, find the people you can talk to, either family, in work, professionally, and have the discussion. Please. Yeah.
So important. Thank you so much. So we're almost at the point where I will stop asking questions and open it up to audience questions. But I just want to, say a couple, and I'll ask for just short answers as we're wrapping up. But Andrew, who does a great job as the head of Open, our LGBTQ+ society here. Andrew, something came up in your Storyscape that was funny, but it was serious, important, and you kind of talked about how now. So can you explain that, and just maybe even summary of your story and what you meant by that as well?
Should it's like how do people come out to you? Yeah. So I think as diversity becomes more aware, everybody's more aware and trying to be more inclusive, sometimes you can forget the difficulties that people are going through a little bit. And for LGBTQ people, it could take a lot of effort, a lot of energy to come out to people, especially the first couple of people. It's very challenging. You don't know how they're going to react. I've had people negatively react when I came out to them, people who are no longer in my life. And there's always that fear. So sometimes nowadays, I've seen it happen that people come out and the people they're talking to are kind of like, oh, it's not a problem. It's not an issue, it's grand, fine. And they move on. But they kind of forget the amount of energy that person has had to give to this. So what I would say as a tip in general is to say thank you. Don't make a big show of it. Don't be like, oh, you really are, I didn't know. But just to be like, thank you for taking the time, telling me that you trust me with that piece of personal information about you. And I think that makes a huge difference. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, I just really want to ask this question, so I'm going to just go a little bit over time. Brunel, so you actually, we were having a planning meeting about this whole week, and Brunel asked a question which I thought was really interesting. She asked, can I say the word black? I really wondered about that question.
Sure. Okay, so in communicating with colleagues around, issues like, your background, your sexuality, that could be age, disability, race, there can be, conservativeness in terms of being able to have that conversation. People feel uncomfortable in terms of, what language should I use, what word should I use? Should I maybe introduce it in the form of humor and see how that person reacts? It's coming up to summertime. Do I make jokes about, you're tan and how dark I am in comparison to you. And those things can feel really uncomfortable, but you can see that people are trying to have that conversation. So I suppose my question in asking if I can use the term black was also to bring to light the fact that there are challenges, you know, in terms of people's ability to be open about having the conversation about, you know, the race dimension. So in terms of, you know, using the right terminology, also, you know, as someone from an ethnic background, making your, I suppose that the person who you're having that conversation with feel comfortable that it's okay to use the term black, that you won't be offended. So I think there's a mutual responsibility to be comfortable with that discomfort, understand that, you know, people are genuinely sometimes curious, that people are not, you know, you assume good intent, that people are not trying to tokenize you or, you know, make racial inferences. So it's also about, you know, how do I make people feel that it's okay to use those terms by me myself introducing those dynamics into a conversation. So the takeaway in terms of the question was really, how do I introduce this in such a way that people know that it's okay to use those terms and that you don't take personal offense?
Thank you so much. I have been told we're kind of wrapping up, so I'm hoping you guys will come up with questions that I still want to ask. Otherwise, I will continue, but I want to give you a chance to make it a bit more interactive. So questions, guys, for the panel, or comments? We've been having open discussions all week, so let's not stop now. Do we have questions? Yeah.
More awareness, or is there anything that you recommend? Book a film maybe or something to just
yeah.
get that awareness in media for ourselves maybe?
Brilliant question. I really want to know the answers as well. Recommended reading, podcasts, movies.
For mental health, there's a lot of, it's great now, there's a lot of resource. Straight away, ones you might know, things like Aware, Pieta House, that might be in the media, trigger risk for suicide, it's very important. And again, these are all online, there's meetings and things like that. In terms of reading, I do it's a lot of online, hard copy books, not so much, but anyone that I've met that has experienced depression or, you know, anxiety, they usually speak of the work of Aware and Pieta House.
Yeah, I would say that I mean, there's plenty of queer media out there that you can consume, but as well, I think Shout Out, we had in during the week, they have a really good website that goes over the terminologies in LGBTQ. There's a lot there, so taking the time to just go through it and understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. We actually also this week watched an episode of Queer Eye at lunchtime on Monday, and I can really recommend that. You learn a lot, and it's. Anyone? Recommendations, Eva?
In terms of like literature, but I suppose what this week maybe might have taught us is that you can learn a lot from just listening to people and being curious and just asking people about their story and if they want to share it. And I think that's a really good way of learning about different cultures or experiences, is to actually just listen to other people's stories as well as just the actual formal literature as well.
We have another question there? Serkan, question? Oh, come on, you've been so involved all week. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so then I will just go back then to something I wanted to ask Vanessa that we didn't get a chance about. Just about, we've heard a bit about what we can do as leaders. So how, I guess, what's your opinion on introducing quotas into
Yeah, so okay, so it's a complex question, right? If we're to give a yes or no answer, I think that's where we fail. So for me, quotas are the product of something much bigger. So if you'd asked me 10 years ago what I thought of quotas, at this point I would have said unnecessary, and it promotes all sorts of negative connotations around tokenism and also rands, etc. But if everybody here is mobilised and in the world at large to accept that diversity means better business, diversity means better for society, diversity means better for everybody, then absolutely quotas are a programme to drive that, right? So we can sit in our laurels and wait, and probably my 4 daughters won't enjoy the measure of anything really meaningfully different to what I'm experiencing today, given the privileges they are enjoying already, or we can drive it, right? And that's where I suppose things like quotas become absolutely critical. So, to have a conversation just about quotas in isolation, I think, is where we start getting into conflict, where people start thinking, oh, I'm uncomfortable with it, men and women. It kind of undermines the value of the person that's there as a result of a quota, but it is an absolutely necessary programme in my view. And I mean, do I think that we should be very specific about all elements? No, probably. But, when we look at things like the gender balance in organisations or at different parts of the management chain, and we identify that there's an issue, then it's what the quota drives is the value, and that's things like diversity in recruitment, in pipeline building, in branding. Where are we going to go sourcing our people? Where are we going to identify high performing female leaders? So it's not necessarily just about the quota, it's about all of the kind of activity that is driven as a result of it. Yeah.
Thank you. So did questions, comments? No? Everyone feels like wine?
Wine o'clock.
Wine o'clock? Okay, it does feel like wine o'clock now. So I want to just give some final thoughts. Eva, congratulations on a fabulous week. Would you like to share some final thoughts with everyone?
It's been such a great week, and everyone has been so brilliant to come and share their stories, and the stories that we've heard have been so inspiring, and I think it would be a real shame for that discussion to end here. And obviously we have such a diverse workforce, as mentioned, and we do celebrate it, but even to just keep it on the agenda and just even in your teams and things like that, I think it would be great if we could just kind of keep the conversations going, and not for us to all kind of close in again, and just kind of celebrate who we are and just keep that momentum. It would be great.
Absolutely.
So, before we do a wrap and wine time, I just want
who were involved in this week. It's been phenomenal. I am so proud of what we've done this week, some of the topics that we've covered, some of the people who've contributed. It's just been really good, and I'm very, very proud of what we did. I have to call out Antonine and Eva, however. Without both of them, this week wouldn't have happened. It all started off with obviously the work that Rosie was doing with OWL for International Women's Day, and it opened an opportunity to just do something to latch onto it, to make a week out of it, to bring in lots of different ideas and lots of different topics. And both Eva and Antonine grabbed it by the scruff of the neck and got it to where it is today, and everybody bailed on board and went along with the ride, and I think anybody who's played any part in it has gotten something out of the week. I know I absolutely did. It's been a really phenomenal time. I don't want this to end today. I want this to start this week, and we go on and up from here. I think, I was very proud of everything that happened this week. So, big round of applause, please.
Nice job.
Well done. Good job, Antonine.
That's it. Drink the wine.
Yeah.